The queen took one bite, froze like lightning had passed through her, and collapsed from the throne with frosting still on her lips. For one savage heartbeat, the entire royal court thought the unknown baker had just assassinated the only ruler of Delosia with a piece of cake. Guards ripped swords free. Courtiers stumbled back in a wave of silk and panic. A royal physician dropped to his knees. Two ministers started shouting over each other before the queen had even hit the floor. And in the middle of all of it stood Alec Varin, flour on his cuffs, cream on his knuckles, and one terrible realization burning through his mind. He had not failed. He had introduced sugar to a world that had never known it. Alec did not run. He knew better than that. On earth, panic ruined pastry. In court, panic got poor men killed. So while Boots hammered across the marble and the captain of the guard closed in, Alec lifted both hands and said, in a calm voice that felt insane even to him, "If I meant to poison Her Majesty, I would not have wasted this much butter." It was such a stupid sentence that the nearest guard actually faltered. Then the queen inhaled. It was only one breath, but the room stopped moving to hear it. Queen Lysandra Vale's fingers twitched, her lashes fluttered, her lips parted. She opened her eyes slowly, dazed and shining, and for a moment she looked less like a monarch than a woman who had just been hit by a memory from a life she'd never lived. She sat up with help from no one, pushed the physician's hand aside, and stared straight at Alec. "What magic spell," she asked softly, "did you cast on my tongue?" No one in the hall had an answer for that. Alec did. 3 days earlier, Alec had died on another world with rain on his face and sugar under his fingernails. He had been 28, exhausted, broke, and very good at making desserts for people who treated beauty like a religion, and workers like background furniture. He was a pastry chef, the kind who understood why sponge collapsed, why caramel seized, why cream split, why some cakes deserved architecture and others deserved mercy. He knew buttercream, custard, ganache, glaze, syrup stages, meringue, piping, crumb structure, and the strange private pride of making something delicate in a world that rewarded noise. Then a truck ran alight. No prophecy, no warning, no meaningful final words. Just impact, glass, and darkness. He woke in a ditch under a violet sky with someone else's bruises on his body, and someone else's memories fighting to fit inside his skull. This Alec Varan had also belonged to kitchens, but not fine ones. He had grown up in heat, hunger, and shouted orders. Orphan work, burned scars, dough before dawn, cheap inns, bad bread, worse masters. He had learned how to stretch flour, skim cream, mend a cracked pie with scraps, and bow when noble guests wanted servants to look grateful for insults. He had skill but no future. He had died small, unseen, and poor. The new Alec inherited his body, his name, and a world with one missing miracle. This world had sweetness but not sugar. It had honey, and plenty of people worshipped it. It had fruit, orchards, preserves, syrups, and thick, sweet wines reduced into glistening sauces for feast days. Nobles ate poached pears, honeyed nuts, baked apples, plum paste, and cream folded with berry pulp. Children licked orchard syrups from sticks in summer markets. Priests blessed hives like treasure houses. But no one had crystal sugar. No one had powdered sugar. No one had frosting. No one had sponge cakes layered with cream. No whipped buttercream. No candies pulled to threads. No caramel glass. No marshmallows. No meringues. No sweet dust falling over pastries like snow. Their world knew fruit. It did not know dessert. Alec discovered that on his first day, and it was the first time since waking in another man's body that he felt something stronger than fear. Opportunity. Huge, reckless, history-bending opportunity. Because people can live without knowing what they're missing for a very long time. But the moment they taste it, the world changes. He might have spent longer mourning Earth. He might have searched for a wizard, a priest, a ruin, a system window. Some answer bigger than hunger. But hunger is practical, and so was he. He needed work. That need took him to the capital and eventually into the estate kitchens of Lord Menric Hale, who was the kind of noble that treated taste like a status symbol and workers like replaceable utensils. Menric was hosting a royal spring supper. The queen herself was attending. Every silver tray, every roast bird, every fruit arrangement had to whisper wealth. Alec was hired as a temporary hand because one of the pastry staff had sliced open his palm and the kitchen needed another pair of competent fingers. He was supposed to peel fruit, carry cream, stay quiet, and be invisible. That lasted less than an hour. By then, Alec had already corrected a weak custard, stopped a tray of little cream pastries from curdling, adjusted oven heat by instinct, and silently reworked a bland tart filling into something the pastry master actually stopped to taste twice. Menric noticed the moment other people started looking at the new kitchen hand too much. "What is that?" the Lord asked, pointing to a small plated test piece near Alec's station. It was not on the menu. Alec had built it from scraps while everyone else was panicking. Light whipped cream, berry reduction, soft enriched crumb, and a pale topping made from butter, strained milk fat, and the first rough attempt at a sweetness cleaner than honey. Not true frosting yet, but close enough to feel impossible in that kitchen. "A better ending to dinner," Alec said. The pastry master went still. Menric did not like poor men with tone. He tasted the little piece anyway, mostly because powerful men hate mystery more than disrespect. The bite changed his face. Not into joy. Menric was not built for joy. Into greed. "Who taught you that?" he asked. Alec lied with ease. "Memory?" The man narrowed his eyes. "You work in my kitchen now. Make me something worthy of the queen." There it was. The command, the threat, the opening. Alec could already see the trap. If he produced something extraordinary, Menric would claim it. If he refused, he would be thrown out or worse. If he made something merely safe, he would stay poor and disappear. So he chose the only path that had any chance of changing his fate. He decided to overwhelm the court in a single bite. The estate pantry did not have sugar because nowhere in the kingdom had sugar, but it had butter, eggs, cream, fine flour, orchard berries, flower water, and in the back of a storage crate meant for kitchen tonics and livestock mash, Alec found what nearly stopped his heart. White root beets. They were not treated as luxury. They were not considered elegant. Kitchen servants used them in broths or sent them to the stables. Raw, they were earthy and only faintly sweet. To everyone else, they were dull. To Alec, they were buried treasure. He moved fast. He sliced the roots thin, boiled them down, crushed and strained them, reduced the liquid, skimmed the foam, and watched the kitchen air slowly fill with a scent no one there understood. Not floral like honey, not tart like fruit. Cleaner, brighter, simpler. The pastry assistants kept drifting toward him without excuses that made sense. One asked if he was making medicine. Another whispered that it smelled like warm light. Alec did not answer. He was too busy building a weapon. He whipped eggs until his arm burned, folded flour with care, baked thin sponge layers, reduced berries into a sharper filling, worked butter and cream with the beet sweetness into a smooth, pale spread that made the pastry master look vaguely offended by his own previous life choices. Then he assembled it all into one elegant, soft, impossible thing, a cake. Not the heavy festival breads this world called sweet. Not a fruit tart. Not honey pastries lacquered with shine. A real frosted cake. Tall enough to feel ceremonial. Soft enough to feel unreal. White across the surface like edible silk. Delicate berry color between the layers. Light. Refined. Foreign to this kingdom in every way except ingredients. When the kitchen saw the finished dessert, conversation died. Lord Menric stared at it for a long moment and asked the only question that mattered to him. "Can anyone else make this?" Alec wiped his hands on a cloth. "Not tonight." Menric smiled like a man hearing a lock click open. The throne hall glittered with the usual theater of power. Gold lamps, silk banners, nobles arranged by proximity to importance, musicians playing softly enough not to interrupt vanity, and at the center of it all sat Queen Lysandra Vale, ruling alone beneath Delosia's crescent standard. She was younger than Alec expected, and more dangerous than anyone had warned him. No husband beside her, no king to absorb pressure, no prince to hide behind. Just one woman on the throne, straight-backed and still, wearing midnight blue and silver like the sky had been tailored into law. Her face was calm, but not passive. Her eyes moved like knives wrapped in velvet. She had ruled alone for years in a court full of older men who had smiled at her in public and sharpened their doubts in private. The fact that she still sat there at all told Alec more than court gossip ever could. This queen did not survive by being ornamental. Menric presented the cake with the smugness of a man already planning ownership. A rare confection from my kitchens, your majesty. A provincial technique, refined in service to your table. Alec almost laughed at the lie. Menric knew nothing. He had seen one miracle in immediately mistaken proximity for authorship. Lysandra studied the dessert before touching it. That small pause made the whole room wait with her. She looked at the smooth, pale finish, the cut layers, the soft cream, the way candlelight rested on the surface. Then, finally, she took the first bite. The queen collapsed. And now here they were, the room holding its breath while the sole ruler of Delosia stared at an unknown baker and asked what spell he had cast on her tongue. Alec answered carefully because this was the moment that would either crown him or bury him. "No spell, your majesty," he said. "Just a taste your world forgot to invent." The nobles reacted harder to that than they had to her fainting. Not visibly, most of them. They were too trained for that. But shoulders tightened. Faces cooled. A few ministers exchanged quick glances. Menric stepped in at once, smooth and urgent. "Your Majesty, the laborer is impertinent. The dish was produced under my household direction from stores belonging to my estate." Lysandra did not look at him. "Was it?" Menric hesitated for half a breath. That was enough. Alec saw the opening and took it. "My lady, if Lord Menric's kitchens understood what they possessed, they would have served you this years ago. That line did damage. Not loud damage, better. Court damage." Menric's control of the moment cracked in public. Several nobles shifted their attention from him to Alec, and that alone was offensive. A hungry kitchen hand was not supposed to change the temperature of a royal hall. Menric's smile thinned. "Know your place." Alec looked directly at the queen. "At the moment, I am standing in front of it." Silence spread. The captain of the guard looked ready to admire him or arrest him. The high physician seemed offended that joy had interrupted his authority. The ministers hated uncertainty. And on the throne, Queen Lysandra watched Alec the way rulers watch sudden fire, aware it can warm a kingdom or burn one. Then she asked the question that proved she was smarter than every noble around her. What made it sweet? Not who made it. Not which estate could claim it. Not which guild controlled it. She went straight to the source. Alec answered honestly enough to be useful and carefully enough to stay alive. A root, boiled, reduced, and purified. One your kitchens treat as common. Now the room changed for real. A sweetener from common roots was not just novelty, it was danger. Honey meant hives, seasons, estates. Guild roots, temple contracts, and aristocratic control. Fruit meant orchards, land, rot, transport, and class. But if sweetness could come from lowly roots grown in plain soil and processed by skill instead of inheritance, then half the old balance of luxury could tilt. Menric heard it too. "Your Majesty, whatever little trick he has stumbled upon belongs under noble supervision. Such things cannot simply be left in the hands of the man who created them?" Lysandra asked. That cut him cleanly. Alec kept his face still, but inside he felt something sharp and dangerous settle into place. The queen was not merely amused, she was thinking structurally. Good. He needed that. She rose from the throne. That one motion pulled the room tighter than any shout could have. Rulers did not step down for kitchen servants. Lysandra did. She descended the short dais slowly, crossed the polished floor, and stopped in front of the cake. Up close she smelled faintly of winter flowers and cold metal. Her gaze moved over the remaining slice, then lifted to Alec's face. "You made this from a common root. Yes, you can do it again. Yes, you can improve it. Yes." There was no hesitation in him now. If he flinched, he was dead. If he begged, he was owned. So he gave her what courts rarely hear in a useful voice: confidence. Lysandra held his gaze for 1 second longer than custom allowed. And if I give you a kitchen, ingredients, and protection from every noble in this room who has suddenly become interested in your future, what exactly will you give me? Alec could feel Menric trying not to choke on rage. He could feel the hall leaning toward the answer. He could feel, most of all, that the next sentence would define his life. So he said the truth in the most dangerous form possible. "You will be the first ruler in history," Alex said, "to make a kingdom addicted to sweetness." No one spoke after that. The line was too bold, too strange, too large. Some thought him insane. Some heard opportunity. Menric heard theft. But Lysandra heard scale. Her expression did not soften, but something in it sharpened with interest. At last she turned away from him and faced the court. "For 30 days, Queen Lysandra said, Alec Varn and his methods belong to the crown alone. He will work in the royal kitchens under my direct protection. No claim from house, guild, temple, or merchant office will touch him unless I permit it." That was the second explosion of the night. Menric went rigid. 2 guild officers near the rear of the hall looked like they had just seen next year's money burn. A minister opened his mouth, likely to object on procedural grounds, then thought better of it when the queen glanced his way. The captain of the guard relaxed, which in its own way meant more than applause. Lysandra returned to the throne, but did not sit immediately. Instead, she lifted the fork again, cut herself another bite of the cake that had just dropped her to the floor, and ate it with full awareness of the entire court watching her. That second bite was a declaration, not curiosity, choice. By morning, the capital had lost its mind. Rumors ran faster than market carts. Some said the queen had been struck down by a moon-blessed confection. Some claimed a nameless baker had fed her forbidden paradise. Some swore she had asked whether he was a wizard. The best version, which meant the one people repeated most, was that the Queen of Delosia had tasted a white cake so divine she forgot to breathe. Alec was moved before sunrise into an old confectionery wing attached to the royal kitchens, half abandoned because Delosia had never needed a serious dessert workshop before. It had copper kettles, stone counters, good windows, bad drafts, and enough room to become dangerous. More importantly, it was inside the Queen's protection and outside Menric's reach. That did not mean he was safe. It meant the game had changed. His first ally arrived carrying ledgers. Mira Solon, palace inventory clerk, had ink on her fingers. No patience for nonsense, and the expression of someone permanently unimpressed by noble drama. She was assigned to count ingredients, monitor usage, and make sure the new royal baker did not quietly steal half the pantry while changing food history. "You're the man who made Her Majesty fall out of her chair," she said. "I prefer expanded her horizons," Alec replied. "I prefer numbers." Within an hour, he liked her. Within 2, he trusted her more than the smiling people in silk. Mira knew supply chains, storage records, estate patterns, and which goods passed through the palace often enough to matter. When Alec asked about pale white roots from the north, she frowned and said they were peasant crops, winter feed, crude broth stock, and low-grade pantry filler. Poor land grew them well. Noble tables ignored them. Alec almost smiled himself sick. That was the true advantage he had brought from another world. Not magic, not divine blessing, not combat power. Industrial imagination. He knew that history changes when somebody learns to look at a humble ingredient and see a system hiding inside it. So he began testing. He reduced the root liquid further, clarified it, reboiled it, skimmed foam, thickened syrups, tried to dry concentrated sweetness, attempted smoother creams, built fillings, coatings, glazed fruits, and softer confections than the palace had ever seen. Half the first trials failed. One batch burned black, another split, a third turned grainy and ugly. But even the failures tasted strange enough to make the kitchen staff linger. Alec kept going because he did not need perfection yet. He needed proof. And every time Queen Lysandra visited the workroom door unannounced and watched him with those cool, unreadable eyes, he could feel the pressure of it. Not just royal interest, something more focused. She had tasted the future once. Now she wanted to know if it could be repeated. That was the hook driving all of part one. Not war, not foreign princes, not giant politics yet. One queen, one baker, one impossible taste. On the fifth night of his royal protection, Alec finally managed something close to what he wanted. Not clean white sugar yet, not true powder, but a pale golden sweetness forming in tiny rough crystals as concentrated root syrup, cooled and dried on shallow trays. Mira stared at the glittering grains under the workroom lamps, and forgot to be unimpressed for the first time since meeting him. Alec pinched a few crystals, tasted them, and felt a grin spread slowly across his face. There it was. Not honey, not fruit, something new. At that exact moment, the queen stepped into the doorway. She had come without ceremony again, just one silent guard left outside, her dark hair partly unbound, her formal mantle traded for a lighter evening cloak. She looked from Alec's face to the trays on the table to the tiny crystals catching the light like edible gold dust. "What is that?" she asked. Alec turned toward her, held up the first true grains of man-made sweetness this kingdom had ever seen, and smiled like a man holding the beginning of an empire between his fingers. "Your Majesty," he said, "this is what made the cake possible." And when Queen Lysandra stepped closer, eyes fixed on the glittering crystals in his palm, Alec understood that the real story had only just begun. Queen Lysandra stepped closer to the table as if the air between her and Alec had changed density. The little crystals in his palm did not look like much. They were pale gold, uneven, and still rough from the first successful drying. No jeweler would have mistaken them for treasure. No general would have mistaken them for power. But rulers do not stay on thrones by trusting appearances, and Lysandra had already felt what one impossible bite could do. So instead of dismissing the glittering grains as kitchen novelty, she held out her hand. "Give me one." Alec tipped a few crystals into her gloved palm. She studied them first. That mattered. Most people in Delosia tasted sweetness carelessly because they thought they already understood it. Honey was honey. Fruit was fruit. Pleasure had limits. But Lysandra no longer believed that. She touched one grain with the tip of a finger, brought it to her tongue, and went very still. The reaction was quieter than the cake. No collapse, no fainting, just a shift in the face. A woman who ruled an entire kingdom, tasting something so simple and so impossible that all her court training failed to hide the truth of it. Her eyes did not widen theatrically. They sharpened. Her breathing slowed. She placed the rest of the crystals in her tongue and closed her hand around nothing. "This," she said at last, "is cleaner." Alex smiled. That's the point. Mira stood by the work table with a ledger under one arm, watching both of them like a woman trying to calculate how expensive the next month was about to become. "Cleaner than what?" she asked, though she already knew. "Cleaner than honey," Alex said. "Cleaner than fruit syrup. No floral afterweight. No pulp. No fermentation note. No season trapped inside it. Just sweetness. Direct, measurable, repeatable." Lysandra looked up from the crystals in the tray. Repeatable? That was the real question. A miracle can amuse a kingdom. A repeatable process can reorganize one. Alec nodded and moved to the table. He pointed to the stages laid out before her. Washed white beets, sliced roots, cloudy extracted liquid, reduced syrup, cooling pans, drying sheets, and the first rough sugar crystals. The cake was proof of concept. This is proof it can become a system. Not just one dessert. Hundreds, maybe thousands once I refine it. Lysandra's attention tracked every stage, every vessel, every stain on the copper. Explain it simply. So Alec did. He told her the roots held sweetness the kingdom had never bothered to isolate properly. Boil, crush, strain, reduce, clarify, dry. Crude for now, but workable. Improve the method, improve the purity. Improve the purity, improve everything after it. Cakes, candies, glazes, creams. Preserves, storage, transport, trade. Each answer led naturally to the next question, and the more he explained, the less the workroom looked like a baker's corner, and the more it looked like the birthplace of an industry. Mira exhaled slowly. So the cake wasn't the invention. Alec glanced at the crystals. No, the cake was the warning shot. That line sat in the room for a moment. Lysandra removed one glove finger by finger, then took another pinch of the crystals with her bare hand. The intimacy of the gesture hit Alec harder than it should have. Not because it was romantic yet. It wasn't. It was trust, or at least royal curiosity stripped of distance. She tasted the grains again, this time more carefully, then looked at him with a kind of calm that was more dangerous than excitement. How much root did this tray require, he told her. How many farms already grow it? Mira answered that one. More than enough to matter if someone starts paying attention. Mostly northern tenants, some hill villages, poor soil plots. It's a low-status crop. Lysandra's mouth curved faintly. Low-status things are often the most useful. The powerful ignore them until someone else names their price. That line told Alec exactly why she still had her throne. He showed her the failed batches next. Burned syrups, grainy clumps, sticky half-crystals that dissolved too fast. He did it on purpose. If he only showed perfection, he became a trickster. If he showed process, he became a builder. Lysandra understood the difference instantly. She asked what he needed to improve yield. Better pans, more cloth, cleaner water, more roots, time. Labor that could follow instructions without ruining half the work. A room with better ventilation, access to records of which provinces grew the fattest roots and in what season. Most of all, he needed secrecy long enough to scale before the court swallowed the invention whole. At that, Mira gave him a look that said he might be insane, but was at least finally speaking her language. Lysandra paced once around the table. She did not do it for drama. She moved when she thought. Who understands what this is already? You, Alex said. Mira. Me. Possibly Lord Menric understands there's money in it, but not why. The kitchen staff know I'm making something strange. They don't know what it becomes, and if I walk away tonight and do nothing. Alec met her gaze. Then in a year, some greedy lord will stumble into a weaker version by accident. In 5 years, honey guilds and orchard houses will be strangling each other over supply control. In 10, whoever organizes root cultivation first will own half your luxury trade and part of your food preservation. This doesn't disappear because you ignore it. Lysandra's expression changed. Not much, but enough. The shift from interest to commitment. Good, she said. Then I won't ignore it. That was the moment Part 2 truly began. By dawn, the old confectionery wing was no longer Alec's temporary workroom. It was a sealed royal project. Lysandra moved with the efficiency of someone who had learned long ago that hesitation invites theft. The workroom received 2 new locks, 3 guards she trusted personally, and a senior steward who answered only to her office. Mira was reassigned officially to Royal Provisions Analysis, which sounded harmless and was absolutely not. 3 scullions with quiet hands and no noble loyalties were transferred in as Alec's first dedicated assistants. A northern produce inventory was requested from palace stores under the excuse of winter waste review, and Lord Menric, who sent a smiling note asking when the Queen might release his kitchen servant back to proper employ, received a formal reply thanking him for his contribution to the Crown's culinary advancement, and reminding him that royal decrees were not requests. Mira read that letter twice and said, she enjoyed writing this. Alec did not bother hiding his grin. Good. But royal protection did not mean royal ease. If anything, it made the next phase harder. The first crystals had proven possibility. Now Alec had to prove scale. Possibility impresses people. Scale terrifies them. The first bottleneck was the roots themselves. Palace stores had enough white beets for experiments and a few showcase dishes, but not for real expansion. Alec needed steady supply, and steady supply required information. Mira spent half a day buried in crop ledgers, storage tallies, and tax reports from districts most nobles only remembered when collection season came around. By evening, she had a map spread across one of the work tables with grease weights marking root-growing regions. These provinces grow the most, she said, tapping the northern hills and two cold river districts. Poor families plant them because the crop tolerates bad soil and stores well underground. Nobody tracks them carefully because nobody important eats them proudly. Alec leaned over the map, already seeing refineries, roads, drying sheds,